This is Russia, the world's largest freezer. And being home to such a huge landmass, Russia has emerged as the global drug dealer of natural resources, a solid foundation on which to grow a prosperous nation. Or is it? With the Eurasian nation still on the up since the aftermath of the fall of the USSR and a vast amount of potential within its borders, we'll take a look at just how important the Russian economy is, starting with its history. Welcome to the economy of Russia. Now, some of you may know that prior to modern Russia becoming modern Russia, Russia was part of a cool club of Soviet bros that totally enjoyed each other's company and prospered, and definitely did not result in some internal squabbling over who's got the best alcoholic spirit. Anyway, this union guided its economy through a series of 5-year plans, which had its pros and cons. Just the cons were larger and there were many more of them. One of the cons was the use of central planners that tried to keep up with the increasing demands and complexities of the modern economy, with little long-term success. And when the Union broke up at the end of the 20th century, Russia found itself with a centrally planned economy, a mass underutilization of resources, and tens of millions of hungry Russians. So a transition begins. A transition that was definitely one of the most significant economic, political, and social transitions to take place in the last 40 years. A transition towards a market economy. But is it really that simple? Has Russia just dropped its hammer and sickle for a mega-sized portion of burger and fries? Well, for the purpose of this video, we're going to say yes, but with lots of asterisks. The transition that took place in Russia deserves its own video. Just comment a Russian flag below if you want us to create one. Anyway, to keep things short, Russia's president at the time, big man Yeltsin, brought in a sweeping set of reforms that aimed to transition Russia's economy into a capitalist market economy. This approach is often referred to as shock therapy in economics. Now, for the remainder of the 1990s, Russia's economy fell off a cliff, with GDP falling around 40%, hyperinflation wiping out personal savings, and the overall reduction in living standards for tens of millions of Russians, causing a lot of hardship. However, towards the end of the 1990s, after Russia's financial crisis in 1998, which saw the Russian central bank defaulting on its debt, the economy began to turn around. And there are many reasons for this turn in fortunes. One, the Russian ruble had devalued a lot during the previous crisis, making Russian producers more competitive on global markets. 2, a significant amount of pro-growth economic reforms took place in the early 2000s, such as tax and deregulation reforms. And 3, the beginning of a global commodities boom took place. And with Russia being home to many sought-after commodities, it stood to benefit handsomely. This Russian economic boom lasted into the mid-2010s, as the country relative to Western nations shrugged off the effects of the 2008 Great Recession. And as a plus, in 2011, Russia even joined the World Trade Organization, the last major nation to do so. The growth in Russia's profits through its energy exports had other significant knock-on effects within its economy, such as providing investor and consumer confidence that the 140 million strong consumer market was heading quickly towards its potential. But in 2012, with oil, gas, and petroleum responsible for over 70% of total exports, many in Russia recognized the need to diversify the economy, especially since the nation's political class saw its dependence on such exports as a potential risk. Since then, though, the Russian economy's performance has been below par. A major crash in the price of oil in 2014, in addition to economic sanctions that hit the country as a result of some geopoliticking in Ukraine, saw significant shocks being dealt to the average Russian's living standards, as the Russian ruble halved in value against the US dollar in the second half of 2014, with inflation hitting 17%. But with such a brief and volatile history, what is the economy of Russia like today? Has it come back to roar again, Or has it shown no sign of coming out of its economic slump? To get the ball rolling, let's start with some numbers just to see where Russia's economy ranks today. Today, Russia's economy ranks as the 11th largest globally and 5th largest within Europe. Perhaps surprisingly, it's not that much larger than Australia's. Oh, and it's 117 times the size of Jamaica's economy. On a per capita basis, Russia ranks 64th globally, with just over $11,600, and for the first time it ranks lower than China. Anyway, GDP figures aside, a few key characteristics need to be highlighted about Russia's economy today. The first of which is to illustrate just how unequal Russia's economy really is. You see, Russia may not rank significantly worse when looking at income inequality, as shown in indices like that of the Gini index, which depicts Russia's income inequality to be in line with China's, better than the USA's, but worse than pretty much every EU member. However, a slightly deeper look into the nation's wealth and a different story emerges. For example, how much of the nation's wealth do you think Russia's top 10% owns? 50%? 60%? Maybe 80%? Well, according to a report published by Credit Suisse in 2017, Russia's top 10% owned 87% of the nation's wealth, a higher percentage than in all other major global economies. And the top 1% of Russia's population holds 46% of all the nation's personal bank deposits. Now, although these figures may seem extreme, they're not exactly new. Ever since the Great Transition that we mentioned earlier, from a centrally planned-based economy to a capitalist market-based economy, a small group of very lucky individuals got their hands on some very lucrative, resource-rich companies and are often described as Russian oligarchs. And from an economic point of view, this has been terrible. You see, the power that these Russian oligarchs possess and utilize has come at the expense of the vast amount of entrepreneurial and managerial talent that exist in Europe's most populous nation. As such, Russia's institutions are weak and corruption is high. Two key factors that make Russia not the perfect breeding ground for successful companies and an entrepreneurial class. So, Russia's economy sounds a little twisted. There's a lot of wealth in the hands of a few, and its economy in recent years has lagged behind other major global economies, which in part has been a result of a poor business environment. But let's look at the Russian economy from a different angle, because one thing is for sure, Russia's economy has a lot of potential. So, where could the nation, home to some of the world's most badass babushkas, be heading? So, the long-expected boom in Russia's economy to catch up with its Western European peers has been a point of discussion for a long time. In fact, back in 2015, the European Parliamentary Research Service released a report analyzing Russia's economy titled "Will Russia Ever Catch Up?" This idea that Russia will one day rise again to become a significant economic power within Europe, and to a lesser extent the world, is based on two main factors. One, the large pool of labor available in the country, especially compared to other European nations, and two, Russia's absurd wealth in natural resources, capable of propelling the nation onto the highly developed nation list. So, just how much potential is there in Russia? Well, let's start off by outlining the wealth in natural resources that are available in the country. And that figure is an astonishing $75.7 trillion US. Understandably, this is a massive figure, and it's also just an estimate of what is within the nation's borders. But what's agreed upon by many is that it is a far higher figure than any other country. And it is a result of the nation having the world's largest natural gas reserves, the second largest coal reserves, and the 8th largest oil reserves, just to name a few. But being home to such large reserves does not necessarily make a nation wealthy in reality. Just remember about the resource curse and look at Venezuela, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or Angola. Exploiting the natural resources of the country will most definitely be an easy option for Russian governments going into the future, as it brings in a huge financial reward as well as geopolitical leverage. However, Russia's labor force is also a huge source of potential, and it is a necessity for Russian policymakers if they want the nation to emerge as a highly advanced economy in the future. You see, Russia's labor force is 72 million strong, more than 65% larger than the German labor force. And when looking at data published by the World Bank, it's apparent that most of the catching up that needs to be done with richer nations in Europe and the Americas requires Russia to focus more on Russians. You see, when viewed as a share of Russia's total wealth, human capital only makes up 46%, significantly lower than the 70% seen across the OECD. Now, although part of this disparity is down to the vast natural resource wealth in the nation, it also persists when looking at raw wealth figures that show that Russians' human capital has 1/5 the wealth of the OECD average. And even if the growth rate between 2000 and 2017 were to continue, Russia would need around 50 years to catch up to the OECD average. As such, many of the policies recommended by bodies such as the World Bank recommend a diversification of Russia's wealth portfolio to avoid the current cartelization of the economy, as well as to encourage sustained investment towards Russia's human capital. More specific approaches include furthering the development of Russia's university educational potential, improving the quality of Russia's vocational education system, which in Russia is important considering that around 40% of graduates enroll in such vocational programs, and improving collaborative problem-solving skills, creativity, and a series of soft skills, where Russian students perform below the OECD average. Addressing some of these core issues would enable the Russian economy to unblock some of its potential and improve the living standards of the everyday Russian. So there you go. Russia's economy is uneven, resource-rich, and well, oligopolistic. Whether the Eurasian nation will ever realize its potential is ultimately more of a political question, but the potential is definitely there. I'd expect the Russian economy to close some of the gap to other economies across Europe, but I think that its current structure and functioning will effectively limit its potential significantly, to the point that, as it stands in its current form, Russia will not be able to emerge as the economic power we know it has the potential for. But rather, it will remain a nation of extreme geopolitical importance and inequality, unless fundamental political changes are made. Hi everyone, thanks for watching another Economics in Action Economy video. Support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. Also, let us know what direction you think the Russian economy is going to head in. I really enjoy reading people's opinions in the comment section. Otherwise, take care. Bye.